Okay, so in part 1 we did the unboxing of the Rolex Submariner. It's part 2, it's time to get into some details. I'm Andy, welcome to the English Watch. So before we get started, I hope you checked out part 1 where we went into some forensic detail unboxing this amazing watch from Rolex. Yeah, it went on for a bit long before I actually got into the box and you saw the watch, but hey, so we've already unboxed it. You know, we don't need to do that again, do we? I mean, come on. What we're going to do is actually going to see what it's like. We're going to go into some of the history of the Rolex Submariner. We'll look at the specifications, we'll look at some of the details around the dial, the bracelet, the case, some of the wonderful aspects of the Rolex Submariner over the years. Now if you like this content, please give it the thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. And also keep leaving those comments at the end of the videos. You know I love to respond to them and I try and get back to every single one. Right, let's get back into the details. Originally released in 1953 as a time-only watch and later famously worn by Sean Connery and Roger Moore in the early James Bond movies. The Submariner is a monument in the Rolex lineup with almost cult status in the collecting world and enables forums to debate endlessly on the continuous development of the form and material choices Rolex has made over the decades. None more so than the recently released new case design of the 2020 model. A no date or Submariner is still available today, and to some they see this as the classic, the collector's choice, and with its clean symmetrical dial and no cyclops eye. Now this is the true movie Bond watch, where Bond was a bit more rough and tumble, not the pretender from Omega. The date version, well, it's been around since the 1960s, which is longer than I have, so has had enough time in the catalogue to stand beside the no date from an authenticity perspective, and to be honest, this may be the only Rolex I choose to own. And the Cyclops lens is one of the Rolex design cues I was looking for that helps the Submariner stand out from my other watches in my collection. I bought it to be my daily smart casual watch, and a date function was essential for genuinely seeing the date. I still find this more convenient than pulling my phone out of my pocket. Seeing the date at a glance should not be underestimated in a business setting. The 11 reference Submariner, like this one, is the last of the 40mm case diameter Submariners, now sold as a 41mm with the 1-2 reference. This one, introduced in 2010 and replacing the 16620, introduced the super case with the broader lugs and carries forward the maxi dial and the larger lume plots and hands from the 50th anniversary Submariner referred to as the Kermit. It also introduces the ceramic or the Cerachrome bezel, replacing the previous aluminium version. The dive registers are platinum lined and recessed, unlike Omega's flush liquid metal inserts. This version is all steel and uses what Rolex refers to as Oyster seal. This is technically 904L as opposed to the more common 316L grade. This grade of 904L was developed by Rolex and is more corrosion resistant and allows a higher polish due to it being slightly softer than 316. Looking at the key dimensions, we have the 20mm lug width, and it wears nice and slim, only 12.5mm thick. Lug to lug is about 47.5, but it feels more like 51 when you take into account these fixed end links. Now some say it wears a bit bigger than the dimensions suggest with the broad super case design, but I don't feel this is the case, where perhaps the case height and the overall tapering of the bracelet have more of an impact on comfort than the actual visual aspect of the lug width. The waterproof Oyster case has Rolex's triple lock screw down crown with a very crisp knurling that allows easy access despite the tall and rather utilitarian looking crown guards. Fully screwed in, the coronet and the 3 pips are almost perfectly upside down. It's not something that bothers me, but I am curious as to know why it isn't the other way up. The unidirectional ceramic bezel has a sharp and grippy coin edging with a 60-minute scale and has a very refined and muted click. The lume pip at the 12 o'clock is sapphire coated and is perfectly aligned to the trough in the coin edging. On the back we have the plain Rolex screw down case back with the brush centre and the fluted circumference for the removal tool. It's also a good place to see how tight the tolerances are around the bracelet and lugs. Looking at the dial, Rolex use a glossy black lacquer over the brass dial blank with all white gold applique, with hands that are filled with Rolex's proprietary photoluminescent material branded Chromolite. This is said to last longer in the dark than Superluminova and has a characteristic blue hue rather than the usual green. Now the white text is pad printed, and that's a technique known as tampography if you weren't familiar, and includes the Rolex coronet and name and Oyster perpetual date, signifying this is a waterproof case with automatic or perpetual winding and a date function. In the lower part of the dial we have the model name Submariner, the water resistance rating of 1000 feet or 300 metres, and then the word superlative chronometer, which refers to the +2 -2 seconds per day that Rolex achieves over and above the COS chronometer standard of +6 -4 seconds per day. And this is as a case-up watch, not just the movement, and includes additional quality checks for waterproofness, self-winding and power reserve. Underlining all this information are the words officially certified, which attest to the additional lengths Rolex go to guarantee the quality of the watch, and as such are shipped with a green seal and a Rolex 5-year warranty. This watch has a Calibre 31-35 movement, developed by Rolex and in service since 1988, with only minor tweaks and improvements over that time. Now this movement can be found throughout the Rolex range and is a real star, quietly going about its business behind closed doors. The 31-35 has a useful 48-hour power reserve with 31 joules and automatic or perpetual bidirectional winding, all ticking away at 28,800 beats per hour. There's a Rolex designed and patented blue parachrome hairspring that is unaffected by magnetic fields and up to 10 times more resilient to shocks than traditional hairsprings. This is a different direction to other manufacturers who are using silicon and other exotic materials for headlight anti-magnetism. This Calibre is now superseded by Calibre 32-35 with additional refinements, but more importantly, additional power reserve. Rolex don't offer casebacks, but the level of detail and decoration wouldn't disappoint if they did. The Submariner is wrapped in the wonderful Oyster bracelet, and like the case, in 904L steel, and fully brushed. It has a very characteristic tapering from 20mm lugs all the way to the slim 15mm and nicely compact 17mm wide clasp. Each link has a high polish to the outer side edge and is slightly curved to ensure it wraps around the wrist perfectly when secure. The Oyster bracelet is a classic design, and although the links are single piece across their length, there's a faint outline to break up the surface that echoes back to when the centre links were separate. The bracelet is sized with single pins and screws all the way through and sit nicely and flush at either end. And then moving on to the clasp, this has Rolex's Oyster clasp fold over latch that has the applied coronet. Clicking open we can see some steel pushers that give it that reassuring snap when closed. And to open up there's a separate latch inside that just pivots up the top and then releases from the hook inside. Then open up we see this beautiful two-piece lever arm with a decorated Rolex logo, Swiss made, inside with a high polish. Exceptionally well crafted. And very secure. So as I mentioned, some say this wears more like a 42mm. Well, let's have a look. Here we have a 42mm watch. It's the Speedmaster from Omega. Two very classic watches for any collection. And, you know, they both have their own visual bulk. Obviously the Speedmaster has a bigger dial. The Rolex is much broader across the lugs, but they both ultimately have a 20mm lug width. If I firstly put on the Speedmaster, you can see how that wears. So the lugs extend almost to the edge of my wrist. Again, this one's about 50mm across. Still wears nice and flat and recesses nicely into my wrist. With a nice big dial. Okay, so going in with the Rolex. You can see here that the lugs don't quite go all the way to the end of my wrist, although the solid end links do. But that's not part of the visual bulk, it's this piece here. And I think this watch does sit more compact across, definitely. And again, is nice and slim, a little bit slimmer maybe, but it doesn't have the little box section edge of the Speedmaster that sometimes does catch up on a sleeve or a jacket. But what's wonderful about the Rolex is this great tapering bracelet. Almost disappears into your wrist. Now some say this is one of the most comfortable watches you'll ever wear. Now I've not worn half as many watches as most of you out there, but I have to say, It's very well balanced, very well fitting, and as I mentioned, these links all curve perfectly well around my wrist. Right, what I'm going to do, see, I always wear my watches not too tight, but not dangling loose, so how I've achieved that is using Rolex's pretty excellent glide lock. So you can just see inside. If I pull that, this latches down, and then you can slide. There's 2mm increments, and it can be a little bit stiff, but you can just see inside the little divots. That just slides up and down, and then as your wrist expands and shrinks through the day, you can just adjust it and then click it back into place. So I very much hope that you enjoyed part 2 of the unboxing and the review of the Rolex Submariner. It was my Submariner, and as I said, I've had it since February this year. I was lucky enough to pick it up from a Rolex authorised dealer, and I know that's one of the downsides of Rolex watches, particularly the steel sports watches, where maybe the dealer experience and actually going in to obtain one is less than premium and maybe not up to the standards that Hans Wilsdorf would have envisaged way back when he started the business. Now it has to be said, although it is a nice watch, it's a popular watch, it isn't the be all and end all. So if you're lucky enough to get hold of one, great. Don't go out your way to spend way over list price to get one. It isn't worth it. It is a fantastic watch, but there's equally fantastic watches out there that are on par. It is about the branding, and Rolex are masters of that, as we know. Anyway, just in summing up my time with this watch, I mean, it's been 6 or so months now, and what do I think? Well, I've obviously gone into detail in terms of what the watch is, how it operates and how it feels on the wrist, and I have to say I'm wearing it again today. I've taken off the Speedy, and this is a fantastically comfortable watch to wear. Yeah, there's no denying it. Now there are 1 or 2 things that do annoy me about the watch. The first one being the anti-reflective coating. So Omega tend to put anti-reflective coating on the outside of the crystal. Rolex don't. I suspect more because of service than anything else. So obviously over time the anti-reflective coating can scratch, and I have got a few little nicks on some of my Omegas that, yeah, it's only minor and you can see it, but it's not really a big deal. But on the Rolex watches, they don't put any anti-reflective coating on the outside of the crystal, so that it does tend to catch the light and can wash the dial out a little bit. And the Cerachrome bezel as well, it's got a similar property where in the right light the dial and the bezel tend to go a bit milky, which can detract a little bit. It's only a minor gripe, and most of the time the watch is down at my side, so I don't really notice it. Overall, the experience I've had with the watch, buying it, owning it, marvelling at it, has been fantastic. You know, it's a watch that will stay in my collection for many years to come, and maybe, who knows, my son will be lucky enough to get it as a graduation or a wedding present, or who knows what later on, or maybe I'll just keep it. So if you've enjoyed this video, please give it the thumbs up. Let's get some comments going, let's get into a bit of debate, let's talk about the watch, let's talk about your experiences, positive ones mainly. And if you're new, please hit subscribe. The more the merrier. You know, we're trying to grow the channel, and every time I get a new subscriber, it helps me grow, it gives me an understanding of whether I'm doing things right or not. And I'm taking on board some of the comments in terms of the way I talk, the way I describe things. Maybe I sometimes go a little off-piste, but that's just the way I am. That's this channel, yeah? This is me talking to you about watches. So it is my personality on the screen, warts and all. So if you enjoy that, please keep watching. Anyway, I'm Andy, this has been The English Watch. Take care, and I'll see you soon. Bye for now.